Alright, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to trees. You remember trees? It's been a while. I haven't seen any myself in about 4 weeks, and I looked it up. Apparently they're doing just fine. They are oblivious to the pandemic, so I suppose there's that comfort as well. But today I just wanted to talk about sort of how British and American trees are very, very different from each other, and in many different ways, 4 to be precise. And those of you that follow me on Twitter will know that I've been doing a lot of research into this, right? I've been getting to the root of the problem. Sorry about that. And so without further ado, let's take a look at 4 different ways that Britain and American trees are very, very different. When people describe the British landscape to me, right, they usually remark on how green it is, but that's more to do with the hills and the pastures and the Celtic supporters. It's less to do with the forest. In fact, you'll be surprised to hear Britain is in the lower half of most forested places in Europe, with only 12% of the nation being covered by trees. In fact, neither it nor the United States comes close to Suriname, which is almost 90% forest. That is insane. But compared to Britain, America has got some serious wood. 34% of the country is forest, and actually if America comprised all of the land that's to the east of the Mississippi River, as it used to do, then that number would be substantially higher. And if early settlers hadn't clumsily chopped down millions of trees, it would be higher still. Nonetheless, up in the northeast, it's very green, right? There's plenty of greenliness. I mean, take the state of Maine. 89% of that entire state is forest. You almost can't see the wood for the trees. That's not really what that means. On the other hand, if you went looking for forests in North Dakota, you'd be barking up the wrong tree. I'm very proud of that one. So that's because in the Great Plains, it's rather devoid of trees. In fact, if you took away the Great Plains, America would be considerably higher in the list of rankings when it comes to forest cover. So that's the lowdown on tree population density. Who knew that was a thing between the two countries? But what about the types of trees that we see in both Britain and America? Let's take a look. Something I've noticed as I've travelled around the United States is that the most common types of trees here are very different to the most common types of trees in Britain. But before we look at specific types of trees in both countries, I just want to talk about some observations I made of the physical characteristics of each country's tree sets, right? That makes them sound like they were bought in a store and you have to put them together yourself. But in Britain, our trees tend to be broader, and by that I don't just mean that the trunks are wide, sometimes they are, but it's more to do with the branches and how far they span away from the tree. Whereas in America, that's not so much the case. You often have very kind of tall trees, and the leaves and all of that and the branches don't branch out quite as far as they do in Britain. But they will often be way taller than many of the trees we have in Britain, and I'll get onto that here in just a moment. So let's branch off now to those lists of trees that are common to Britain and America. And I should say that some of these trees will show up in the other country as well. It's just that they're not in the top 5 most popular. So in Britain, you're going to find lots of alder trees, right? And these are popular all across the Northern Hemisphere, including here in the United States. You'll also see beech, not as in the sandy coastlines, but the type of tree. And again, these are prominent throughout the Northern Hemisphere. You will find them in the US, but particularly in Britain, and I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of this because it's in Scotland, but the Meikle beech hedges are reportedly the longest and the tallest hedges in the world. Also popular in Britain is a good old oak tree, right? And what I love about oak trees is that during their lifetime, they produce about 10 million acorns, right? I don't produce 10 million of anything. Mind you, I don't live 1,000 years either, so it's cheating in a way. You also in Britain have a staggering amount of elm trees, which, make nice floors, so that's good. And if you're ever stuck at one, you could refer to it as A Nightmare on Elm Tree. That's not the same thing as the film. And finally, we have an absolute plethora of hazel trees, and of course they're great because they produce hazelnut, and each year a hazel tree in Britain produces around 25 pounds. That doesn't sound like a lot. That's pretty pathetic. Now in America, you may well encounter all of those trees, but they're not among the most common in America. They include, for example, the red maple. Now that is the most common tree in the entire North American continent. And when you're talking about the United States, they're most common in the Northeast. No surprise there, given the map that we looked at earlier. And then you have the loblolly pine. And if anybody can find me a better named tree than that, I will send you a bag of custard or something, because that's amazing. And these are apparently the most widely planted pine trees in the eastern coastal states. This is pretty crazy. They stretch all the way from Texas to New Jersey. Not even planes can say that right now. And then sweet gum. Sweet gum is not something you chew. It is a type of tree. It is one of the most common trees in America. And then just as we do in Britain, you have the Douglas fir, which, you know, it sort of sounds like an actor from the golden age of Hollywood, but it is a type of tree. And like the redwoods, they tend to be found out west in both the Rockies and in sort of the coastal areas as well. I happen to have seen some in Washington state. And finally, the quaking aspen sounds like something from Lord of the Rings, but this is a keystone tree species, and it's called that because of its importance in diverse forest ecosystems. So those are just some of the major, most common trees in both countries. And you can see from those how they work to make the landscapes of both countries very, very different. Okay, so we've looked at population density, we've looked at type. Now, let's look at size. California, it doesn't just have a huge population of people, it also has a huge population of trees, and a huge population of huge trees. In fact, it's there where most of America's, and in some cases the world's, size-related tree records are set. Britain's equivalent of California, and I may never get to say this again, is Scotland. Remember earlier I mentioned the world's longest, tallest hedge? Well, they have other records too. So the tallest tree in the entirety of the United Kingdom is in Scotland. It's a Douglas fir. Douglas gets everywhere, doesn't he? Even crops up in Britain. And the tallest Douglas fir on record in the UK is 217 feet, which to me sounds very tall. I wouldn't want to be at the top of it with my fear of heights. But there are plenty of trees in America, particularly in California, that are so tall they'd entirely block out the sun, thus starving the Douglas fir of oxygen. Chief among those is the world-famous coast redwood, which clocks in at 380.3 feet. And after we finally get the all clear to leave our houses, that's where I'm going, after Target. But I'm not here just to talk about the tallest trees. There's also volume, right? How chunky are some of these trees? Well, the chunkiest, or I should say the most voluminous tree in Britain, again, it's in Scotland, and it's the Cecile oak. The most voluminous Cecile oak was measured at 3,800 cubic feet. I think that sounds like a lot just because it's got thousands in the number, but I don't have anything to compare it to, except its American equivalent, which blows it out of the water. And the clue is in the name. It's called the giant sequoia, and it's bloody ridiculous because this tree is not only sort of thick and all of that, it's also tall, so its volume is outlandish. 52,500 cubic feet, and they can be found on display at Sequoia National Park. Not yet, just wait until this blows over. But if we're just talking about circumference of single trunk trees, the Cecile oak still wins this one in Britain. The girthiest Cecile oak in the entire country comes in at 46 feet all the way around. Sounds huge, doesn't it? That's probably about 37 Lawrences, but it's got nothing on the aforementioned coast redwood, which as well as being the tallest tree in the United States, is also the girthiest at 91.7 feet in its most extreme case. But America doesn't have all the fun. Do you remember at the start of this video when I said that British trees tend to be more broad at the top? In other words, they branch out further. Well, this is evidenced by the comparison of the broadest trees in both countries. In Britain, you're looking at the Oriental Plain, which spans 210 feet. Imagine the destructive power if it ever got opposable thumbs. And in America, the sandpost oak, proving that oak trees absolutely exist in America, has its record at only 181 feet. So go Britain. You get the silver medal on this occasion, or possibly even bronze. Bronze, of course, calls to mind the Bronze Age, which also calls to mind the age of the trees. Do you want to feel old? Not all who were present at the signing of England's Magna Carta in 1215 are dead. I'm not actually kidding. This yew tree in Runnymede was in attendance when King John sealed the deal. It's even rumoured that Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn may have courted here. This was before Dennis. It might even predate the Romans, and if you think that's old, one country stands alone with the oldest trees on the planet: America. Yes, that's right. So while the oldest tree in Britain is another type of yew, that being the Fortingall yew, located in, can I get any guesses? Can I? Yep.
Scotland.
Yes, it is Scotland again. They're hogging all of the records. It's really not fair. That tree is believed to be about 3,000 years old, so takes us back to the start of the Iron Age. So don't complain about that single grey hair that you've just found on your head, especially when you learn about the oldest tree in not just America, but the world. It's called the Great Basin Bristlecone Pine, and do you know where it's located? Anyone? You're right, it's not Scotland. You're right, it's California. California and Scotland. Who knew they had all of the records between Britain and America? It's insane. And this is a very insane record. 4,851 years. That's very specific. They were able to date it to a single year, apparently. And when you do the maths on that, that means that that tree has been standing there at, various levels of size since the first human civilization at Mesopotamia. Mental. And because of the vast importance of trees on our planet, I say treat the trees with care, especially the elderly. That's it for this episode. Let me know in the comments below if you've seen firsthand any of the trees referenced in this video. If you like learning just random British versus American differences, why not follow me on Twitter, where I spout them off every single day. You can do so at Lost in the Pond US. And don't forget, if you haven't had a chance to do so yet, please subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond or up a tree. And why not join the growing number of people that are supporting Lost in the Pond over at Patreon? You can do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond. If you become a patron, not only will you support the channel, but you'll be able to join my secret live streams where you can ask me anything and I'll give you an answer, right? We have a very casual, intimate conversation, and it's great every single week. And so again, go to patreon.com/lostinthepond. In the meantime, have a great week coming up, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching this episode of Lost in the Pond. Don't forget to hit my stupid little face to subscribe, and please share this video with the world. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and if you would like to support this channel, please do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond.